Hello, it's me, Marty McCauley, with another Irish whiskey review. And as you can see, straight away, it's not Irish. It's, it's pretty much about as close to Ireland as you get. Um, it's one of the real close distilleries to me. It's literally just across the water. And in some ways, it's probably the less well known of the two distilleries. Three ish, but two of them's pretty much the same. Um, of the Campbeltown distilleries, you have Springbank. The Springbank and Glen are basically the same thing. It's really only they kept the three to keep the regional status alive. We've talked about this before. But Glen Scotia is probably not as well. It's not as well known as Springbank, and there's a couple of reasons for that. And it's to do with collectability. People have been Springbank has literally just over the last while, literally just exploded, and rightly so. If I'm honest, they tick all the boxes that collectors want. The whiskey's fabulous stuff. It's really good. Um, got an authenticity to it, a history to it, a heritage. They still do all the old style stuff. Really, all the things that people want that they can say is authentic and it's a marvelous place. I mean, just a fabulous place. But just what is it, 5-10 minute walk away, you have this place, Glen Scotia. Now, anyone who knows anything about whiskey knows that Glen Scotia probably, I'll let you in a little secret, Glen Scotia probably make whiskey that's every bit better than Springbank, taste wise. It's really stuff that you want to talk about. I've made the prediction. I've been making it for months now. This is probably going to go up in price. The old Glen Scotias, collectible, aged Glen Scotias, are on the cusp of starting to move that way. Campbeltown, as a region, as a Scottish region, is starting to go like that. Two new distilleries announced going into it. Where once there was over 30, you keep reading how many different ones there was. The book Campbeltown states that at one point there was 36. Other sources say it was 34, 30. Anyway, there was over 30 distilleries in a little town. I mean, a tiny little town. Part of a whiskey powerhouse, pumping the stuff out and shipping it basically up into Scotland and then away over. Like, some of it, reputation wasn't great. Other distilleries, their reputation was superb, but they're decimated. They all went, and they all just disappeared, except for these two. And then, obviously, to keep the regional status, they had to have three, and so they've got three. Now, Glen Scotia is a modern factory-produced dram malt, if you want, whatever way you want to put it. I.e., they use technology. They use proper computer type stuff in rather than handwriting it and saying it the way Springbank do. So it's not a museum. Springbank in some ways is museum-esque. Glen Scotia isn't. It is very, very, very much a mass. I hate using the word mass produced because in terms of scale, they're not making much more than Springbank in terms of volume, but they just do it with an awful lot less people, and the production techniques are the same. In many ways, they're the same as everywhere else. But the spirit they produce, it's great stuff. It really is. It really is. This is the limited edition Campbeltown Festival 2022. Now, in a few months' time, a couple of years' time, anything that Glen Scotia with limited edition on it is going to be worth picking up. Trust me on this. A couple of years' time, once the new distillery's open, and everybody starts to think, right, hang on, this place, I never really, we know about Isla, we know about Speyside, you know, Campbeltown, yeah, and I'll just start to build, and it will. Someone told me the other day that they reckon that Campbeltown is the most awkward place to get to in Scotland, and they're probably right. It sits in the very bottom of the entire peninsula, and it's not an easy place to get to. If you were back in the day when they had lots of distilleries, they were exporting stuff because the boats could come down. The boats were either going up or coming down from Glasgow, picked up the stuff and away, or picked it up and took it up into Glasgow. So it was easy enough to get there. These days, it's not the same with the trade on boats. So they don't. Basically, there's one road, and it's ours to get there. So, yeah. Whatever you drop, Guinness. Lovely. So this is for the festival, and it's peated PX cask finish. I'm not usually a lover of peated PX casks. It's been tried a few times. It's been tried a few times with varying degrees of success. It depends on the balance of it. You have the spirit, the whiskey spirit, which your whiskey spirit, depending on really what it is, really should be sort of cereally. That's kind of where it should be. If it's green, it should be floral. But you know, your base spirit really should have that sort of intrinsic grain quality. Certainly after aging a little bit, depending on the wood, obviously, it should still carry its sort of DNA with it. Then you add in bourbon cask, probably. Then you add in either, because this is sometimes what they do, they put it in like Lafroig casks, ex-Lafroig casks, to take on some of that peated stuff. Seldom ever works. And then they'll finish it in PX, or there's this sort of combination, and it just goes, and it can be sweet and peaty, and it just doesn't work sometimes. Sometimes it works really well. Now it is 56.5%, so quite heavy. 8 years old, age statement and stuff on it. Comes in a box. Campbeltown is one of the officially recognised and protected whisky regions, entire peninsula. Blah, blah, blah. Basically, what I've just told you. Our annual limited edition festival bottlings are intriguing, bold, and appealing to those looking to be wonderfully surprised. This year's release is no exception. A heavily peated spirit distilled in 2013. Matured for 7.5 years in 100% first fill bourbon casks, getting you the sweet vanilla notes coming out of the bourbon cask. And also, this is one thing that people don't sometimes pick up in bourbon casks, the charcoal element of them. It's not only that it adds the sweetness coming from the breakdown of the vanillin and stuff in oak. The charcoal acts as a sort of rapid filtration and takes out some of the more off notes or sharp notes that come off the spirit. So you've got this kind of filtration and also the vanilla and the notes that's coming off this. First fill, obviously that supercharges that. Before I do a little 100% first fill, before a 12-month finish in the finest first fill Pedro Ximenez hogsheads. Glen Scotia's signature sea spray can be detected on the nose with a gentle smoke reminiscent of a fading bonfire on a Campbeltown beach. If you're on a beach in Campbeltown, you'll need a bonfire because it's freezing. Trust me, it's the same weather as here, and it was bucketing down outside earlier on, just out. The sun was shining and it was still bucketing down. That's the kind of weather. Anyway, on the palate, runny treacle, rich spices and underlying peat influence come together in harmonious celebration, a true taste of Campbeltown. Now, when they say an underlying peat, automatically my spider sense starts to flip up, because I think this is peat cask. Now, this seldom ever worked for me, but I'm always willing to give things their own hearing and look at see what's happened with what they're doing. Um, it all depends on how they're doing it. If they're putting it in an ex-peat cask, then possibly that just that little bit of level of interplay. If it's put out there as a fiery put out, then I'm sorry, it just never really works. It always tastes. It's a bit like tasting um, freshly squeezed orange juice and orange cordial. It's that kind of difference between the two. But right away, the peat coming off that just sort of lifts it up. And on the nose, it's got. This is the one thing about Glen Scotia. It has these wonderfully interesting notes that keep appearing. The Victoriana has this lovely, I mean, really, really nice, clean, fresh fish note that comes off it. Briny, without being overpowering or even being fishy. It just sort of smells like fresh fish. This doesn't have that. This is dry roasted peanuts. Um, it's like picking up a handful of dry roasted peanuts and salted peanuts and throwing a few salty peanuts in it. That's kind of what you're getting on the nose. And you can tell by the way I'm smiling how much this is really nice. Elements of wood again, sort of like a fire that you come down to in the morning that's just died down. It's just almost dead. You couldn't put it straight in a plastic bin. It's that sort of level that it's got, and it's really really nice, really nice. Anything that makes me smile is going to be good. You know, might not taste great, but it's just got me excited, and this is great. On the nose, it's just an interesting, pleasant nose. That honestly, it's got that sort of dry roasted peanuts, little elements of salt, the peat's there, and it all's working really, really well. It just sort of comes together in a beautiful nose. Really, really nice. Really pleasant. Eminently drinkable. When it first hits your palate, quite heavy ABV. It is 56.5%. It's too much. It's too much on the ABV because you're really just getting that burn, and it's not anywhere near the level it should be. This needs a touch of water. Now, what that does to the nose, then that you have to take that with it. But that needs, here's half a teaspoon, and I'm going to give it another half. So a full teaspoon of water, and give it a little minute, just to settle down. These things are always subjective. I had someone on one of my previous things saying, "Oh, you say you didn't like that. Other people, all the other critics rave about it, and other critics think it's really good and whatever." It's all personal choice, man. That's what it is, you know. Now, this is the problem. It needs water for the palate, and to be honest, the palate and the finish is it's really where it needs to be. The fact that I've put water in that has kind of dulled the nose for me. It's become a little bit wet. And it's not that I've drunk a little bit of this. I've drunk a couple of shots out of this. It's not at its best when it's at full ABV. It is when it's on the nose. On the palate, you're not getting enough out of it on the palate without putting the water. But the water unsettles the nose a little bit, and the nose goes from those lovely spicy, salty, nutty thing down to being a little bit, well, wet. On the nose, it's kind of come down to a little bit more like almost like a piece of wet wood that if you throw it on a fire, it kind of gives off a bit of steam, and it's not really giving you anything what it was earlier on. But now on the palate, it's opened up. First thing that hits you is a sort of floral sweetness, kind of like violet. You know those Parma violet sweets hits you first. It's that sort of nice floral sweetness, moving on to sugary sweetness from the PX. It's developing back as it goes back on the palate. Again, there's little elements of sugar, but there's more of the sort of woody notes. The first fill bourbon's definitely there. It's coming up a little bit as it sort of interplays down on the finish, which really, really works. But it doesn't work on the nose. And it's funny because the nose gets you excited. Then it's not really, it's too harsh. Needs a drop of water. Kills the nose and improves the palate. Yeah, the peat works in this. It just a nice little bit to just give a little element to just bounce it along, and just lifts it a little bit. Or sorry, doesn't lift it, deepens it a little bit, I should say. Instead of the PX bubbles along, the first fill bourbon bubbles along, the peat bubbles along, the Glen Scotia spirit bubbles along, and they all do it on a nice journey together. Are they all harmonised? No, I would say no, because they're sort of in the same ballpark, but it's more like, rather than them being united and playing as one thing, it's like four members. It's like your back four in football. Not American football, to all the American football guys there and helmets on and all that. No, to soccer. I had to explain this to my guests the other day. I kept talking about football, and they were like, 4th down and 10 and all that stuff. No, it's kind of like you've got a back four, and some of them are doing well, and some of them are doing a bit Man United. Dead funny. No, but some of them are kind of working together in unison, and some of them are maybe not things. So I wouldn't say it's the best balanced drink I've ever had, but it is. This is a playable drink. You can easily play about with this and put a little bit more water in it and see what it does in the palate. Does it take more expanse at the nose? This one bottle, honestly, you could add a fair amount of water to this, I think. And some people's palates would probably take maybe 2 teaspoons in what I had, 2 teaspoonfuls of water, until they're getting what they think is right. I personally think maybe another half teaspoon in this would probably do more in the palate, but it's taking away the expanse of the nose, and it just is. Marking it, because it's enjoyable and fun, and because you get that interplay and that decent amount of work that you can do with it, I quite happily give this an 8.5 out of 10. I think this is really good, and it makes me smile. It really does, and I find that with Glen Scotias, they do make me smile. They do make me think this is bloody good quality stuff. This is really good quality stuff, and there's a note there. These notes that appear that you don't really get with other whiskies, and honestly, it's got a character, and because there's not that much similar to it, there's times that it's hard to sort of go, hang on, where'd that come from? So this is what happens. Where did that come from? In that Glen Scotia, and it makes it hard to place where this is. Honestly, it's just a great whiskey. It really is. And as I said at the start, everybody talks about Springbank. Everybody's raving about Springbank, and everybody's emptying their bank accounts to buy Springbank. Glen Scotia's right there. It plays with. I'm personally, I think it's as good as any Scotch that there is. It definitely is, and the nice variety of stuff that they have. I have I have about 4 Glen Scotias, I think, floating about. And yeah, I definitely, if you haven't tried Glen Scotia, I promise you pick up bottles of it now, because in a few years' time, it's going to be much harder to do. This bottle I think was £45, something like that, £50 a bottle, and I mean for that you're getting an age statement, 8-year-old whiskey, limited edition, malt festival, 50. What did I say? It was 56.5% for £45-50. I don't think you're going to go wrong. So, without further ado, pick yourself up a bottle of this and enjoy it. And take care of each other. Don't forget to join me and Justin every Saturday night on Irish Whiskey Review, where I'll poke fun at his wee baldy head. And I've given myself the summer cut today, so he can sort of keep me going about the same thing. But anyway, take care, guys. All the best.